Creators of Reddit, when did you witness someone completely destroy their own case? Story 1. I had a client who was being sued for breach of contract. The case was pretty shaky from the plaintiff's side, and I honestly thought we had a good chance of winning until my client decided to take the stand. I told him over and over again, don't volunteer information. Just answer the questions. But nope. First thing he does is proudly tell the court that he never intended to fulfill the contract in the first place and was just seeing what he could get away with. I physically felt my soul leave my body. The plaintiff's attorney just blinked, slowly turned to me and mouthed, "Thank you. Needless to say, we lost." The judge even looked at me afterward and said, "You did what you could." That was the last time I let a client testify when I had even the slightest doubt. Story 2. I was working a custody case where the father was trying to gain full custody of his kids, claiming the mother was irresponsible, emotionally abusive, and completely unfit. On paper, he looked like the better option. Clean record, good job, involved in the kids' lives. It could have gone his way. That is, until he brought in his new girlfriend to testify on his behalf. She was visibly drunk. Not just tipsy, slurring, stumbling, reeking of alcohol in a quiet courtroom at 10 a.m. She tried to sit in the wrong seat, called the judge Your Majesty, and started ranting about how the mom was a witch who cast spells on their toothbrushes. The judge ordered a recess and called both attorneys to chambers. We didn't even get to finish presenting our side. The judge awarded primary custody to the mom right then and there. My client was stunned. I was furious. He said, "Well, I didn't know she was drunk. She seemed fine in the car." Bro. Story 3. In a personal injury case, a guy was suing a grocery store for allegedly slipping on a wet floor and injuring his back. He claimed he couldn't work, couldn't play with his kids, couldn't sleep properly. He limped into court dramatically with a cane, groaning every few steps. The jury looked sympathetic. Then the defense played a surveillance video from the same morning of the trial. The guy was seen unloading heavy boxes from his truck, jogging across a parking lot and, wait for it, practicing his limping walk before heading into the building. He destroyed his entire case in 10 seconds flat. Not only did he lose, but the judge suggested forwarding the case to the DA for possible fraud charges. His attorney didn't even bother cross-examining after that. Just quietly packed up and left the court. Story 4. I was doing pro bono work for a tenant in a landlord-tenant dispute. The landlord was suing her for damages, claiming she trashed the apartment and didn't pay rent. She had receipts, photos, even texts from the landlord admitting he hadn't done repairs and was withholding her security deposit out of spite. We were golden. But during cross-examination, the landlord got asked if he ever entered the apartment without notice. He denied it. My client, unprompted, blurts out, "What about the time you came in while I was in the shower and tried to touch me?" I nearly choked. That was never mentioned to me. Total bombshell. Judge immediately stopped the proceedings and called for a recess. Eventually, it turned into a criminal investigation and a restraining order case. We were there to dispute carpet damage and unpaid utilities. It ended with the landlord being arrested for trespassing and sexual misconduct. She destroyed his entire case, but in the best possible way. Story 5. This was during a civil trial where a client of mine was being sued by a former business partner. The whole case centered around a single email exchange. The plaintiff's team had presented a printed-out email showing my client agreeing to something he 100% denied ever agreeing to. It didn't look forged, but it also didn't make sense. The wording wasn't his style, and the date format was odd. During cross, the plaintiff swore the email was genuine, that he printed it directly from his Gmail, etc. We asked him to produce the original digital copy for metadata. He said he accidentally deleted it. Convenient. Then, and I swear to God, the guy leans over during a break and says, loud enough for others to hear, "You think they'll figure out I photoshopped the email?" The court clerk overheard him. It got back to the judge. Needless to say, case dismissed, perjury charges recommended, and my client walked out with the biggest grin I've ever seen on a man in a suit. Story 6. I was sitting in on a case where a guy was charged with petty theft from a department store. Pretty straightforward. Security had him on camera putting merchandise in his coat and walking out. His defense? He claimed he was testing store security as a favor to the manager. Said it was an unofficial loss prevention audit. The entire courtroom was dead silent when he said that. The prosecutor, without missing a beat, said, "So just to clarify, the store did not hire you in any capacity?" "No," the defendant said proudly, "but I figured I'd help them out. You know, keep them on their toes." Jury didn't even leave the room before laughing. The judge told him, "This might be the most creative confession I've heard all week." Convicted. Sentenced. Still probably thinks he was the hero of that story. Story 7. I represented a woman in a restraining order here. Her ex was contesting it, claiming she was exaggerating everything. On paper, he seemed calm and reasonable. He even wore glasses to look more studious, according to his attorney. He testified first, gave a very polished, rehearsed statement denying all accusations. Then it was my client's turn. She was visibly nervous but had printed out screenshots, call logs, and voicemails. Some of it was nasty, but honestly, not enough to get a slam dunk ruling. Then, like divine intervention, his phone buzzed in the court. The judge told him to turn it off. He pulled it out, and his lock screen lit up with a text. In bold preview, "That bitch is dead after this hearing." The courtroom went silent. The judge asked to see the phone. Bailiff took it. The number was confirmed as his. And yes, he had sent it to her minutes earlier, while she was testifying. Restraining order was granted immediately. Judge even recommended the DA look into pressing charges for threats. His attorney just buried her face in her hands and didn't say a word. Story 8. This one still blows my mind. I was watching a family court case involving a woman trying to prove that her ex-husband was hiding income to avoid paying proper child support. She was claiming he had a cash business on the side he wasn't reporting. He denied everything. Said he was broke, unemployed, struggling. During questioning, he gave this whole dramatic speech about how he wished he could support his kids better. And the judge was starting to buy it. He even dabbed his eyes a little. Then the woman's lawyer pulls out an Instagram video, a recent one, of him making it rain at a nightclub, bragging about his side hustle and flashing stacks of $100 bills. He tried to claim it was prop money for a music video. The lawyer hit play again. The guy literally says, "Ain't no taxes on this money, famik the IRS," while looking into the camera. Case took a full 180 seconds. Judge ordered back child support, increased future payments, and reported him to the tax authorities right there. He went from Oscar-worthy sob story to tax fraud suspect in under 5 minutes. Story 9. Criminal case. DUI. My client was facing a second offense, but we had a pretty good chance of getting it knocked down. The dash cam footage wasn't great, field sobriety test was questionable, and the officer had a history of sloppy reports. Then my client decided to testify, against my advice. I don't know what came over him, but he got up there and decided he was going to debunk the breathalyzer machine like he was in a courtroom episode of Mythbusters. He rambled on about mouthwash, peppermint gum, radio frequencies, and how he read online that certain body types skew the number. The judge was just staring at him like he'd grown a second head. Then he says, "Besides, I wasn't even that drunk. I drive better after a couple beers." Silence. That one sentence undid 3 weeks of prep work. Judge revoked his bail right there. He didn't even finish testifying. I didn't speak to him again after sentencing. He sent me a letter from jail blaming me for the loss. Story 10. This was a civil case where a guy was suing his former employer for wrongful termination. He claimed they fired him for being too old, that it was age discrimination, and he made a decent argument. The company was sketchy, didn't document warnings, and the termination came right after his 60th birthday. We were actually a little nervous. Then, cross-examination. The employer's attorney asked a simple question. "Did you ever express dissatisfaction about your coworkers to your supervisor?" The guy chuckles and says, "Hell yeah, they were all lazy little TikTok brats. I told my boss every day I hoped they'd all get fired before me." Attorney: "Did you ever express this in writing?" Plaintiff: "I might have sent a few emails, yeah." Emails were then entered into evidence. They weren't just a few, there were dozens. He called one coworker a woke toddler, another a vegan snowflake, and one poor soul he nicknamed HR Barbie. The judge eventually sighed and said, "Sir, I think we've established why you were fired." Case dismissed. Story 11. I represented a guy in a civil lawsuit over an unpaid loan. He borrowed $10,000 from a friend and never paid it back. His defense was that it was a gift, not a loan. We had a shot. There was no written agreement, just a few vague texts like, "I really appreciate this, man." So we argued ambiguity, that it was given out of generosity, etc. The plaintiff looked shaky on the stand, and the judge seemed unsure. Then my client got cross-examined and said the dumbest possible thing. I told him I'd pay him back when I felt like it. That's what I meant in the texts. The courtroom stopped. Judge asked, "So, you did consider it a loan?" Client: "Well, yeah, but like, a chill one." We lost, obviously. Story 12. This guy was suing a contractor for destroying his dream kitchen. Alleged shoddy work, leaks, bad wiring, the works. He showed photos of cracked tiles, warped countertops, and crooked cabinets. It looked bad. The contractor, though, had documentation, signed off invoices, inspection approvals, And most importantly, before and after pictures showing everything was done professionally. It came down to the homeowner's testimony. He gets on the stand and starts ranting about how the contractor ruined his marriage, made him hate his house, and disrespected the energy of the space. Then he pulls out his phone to show a TikTok proof video. In it, he walks around the kitchen dramatically saying things like, "This aesthetic is an insult to my soul." No actual damage shown, just him crying into the camera about vibes. The judge, visibly confused, asks, "Do you have documentation of actual damages or just emotional grievances?" The guy with all the confidence in the world says, "This kitchen is spiritually unlivable." Isn't that enough? Case dismissed. The contractor's attorney didn't even need to make a closing argument. Story 13. Family law case. Father wanted to modify custody so he could have full-time placement of his 6-year-old son. Claimed the mother was negligent, irresponsible, and emotionally unstable. He seemed composed and reasonable in court, brought a binder of what he said was evidence, and had a lawyer who clearly coached him well. Then came his cross-examination. The opposing attorney asked, "You have a social media account under the username KingDad420? He paused. "Yes." "Did you post a video last month titled 'Why Kids Are a Trap' with the caption, 'Fathers, Stay Woke'?" His face dropped. They had screenshots, the video, and comments where he said he only wanted custody to stop paying child support. He even joked about getting back at his ex through the kid. Judge gave him supervised visitation only, and it was clear he wouldn't be getting full custody again anytime soon. Story 14. This was a landlord-tenant dispute I sat in on as a clerk. The landlord was trying to evict a tenant for unpaid rent and claimed the unit was being destroyed by pets, despite the lease allowing them. The tenant countered, saying the landlord refused to fix a mold problem, making the apartment uninhabitable. Tenant had pictures, emails, even health inspection reports. Landlord claims she never received any maintenance requests. Then the tenant pulls out printed screenshots of the landlord's Facebook posts. She had posted memes mocking her tenants, including one that said, "If you don't pay rent, I won't fix shti. This isn't a charity." She also posted a picture of a leak in the ceiling with the caption, "Ha ha ha. This is what they get for complaining." The judge's face turned stone cold. "Do you understand what retaliation means, ma'am?" She tried to backpedal. "It was satire." Judge: "Well, consider this outcome a tragedy then." Tenant stayed. Landlord got reported to the housing authority. Story 15. A guy was facing charges for assaulting his neighbor during a parking dispute. His defense? Self-defense. Said the neighbor came at him first, he feared for his life and just reacted instinctively. Then, during the trial, his lawyer made a huge mistake by letting him testify. On the stand, the guy started bragging. Full-on bragging. I warned him. I said, "Come any closer and I'll knock your teeth out." He did, so I followed through. "Can't say I didn't warn him." The prosecutor asked, "So you admit to threatening him before he got close?" Guy: "Yeah, because I knew what kind of guy he was. He didn't even touch me, but I wasn't waiting for that." He literally admitted to preemptively punching a guy he thought was going to be a problem. Self-defense? Gone. He was found guilty within an hour. I've never seen someone sink their own case with that much confidence. Story 16. A guy was suing his ex-employer for wrongful termination, claiming he was fired because of his political beliefs. He painted himself as a victim of workplace discrimination and said the company didn't like that he was outspoken. The company's defense? They fired him because he threatened coworkers. He said that was a lie. Then they brought in a former coworker to testify. She said he told her, "One day I'll show you all what real consequences look like," and that he made everyone uncomfortable. Still, it was hearsay until the defense pulled out his own podcast. Turns out this guy had a weekly show where he ranted about his job. One episode, played in court, had him say, "They think I'm going to shut up and keep taking it. They have no idea who they're messing with. I've got plans." Judge listened to 2 minutes, took off his glasses and said, "Do you understand this is being entered into the record?" The guy just shrugged and said, "Well, freedom of speech, right?" "Yeah, not freedom from consequences." Case dismissed. Story 17. I was defending a teenager in a vandalism case. He was accused of tagging a local community center with graffiti. The police had no security footage, no physical evidence, and the only witness was someone who saw someone in a hoodie running away. He would have walked free if he had just kept quiet. But during his testimony, the prosecution asked what he was doing that night. He says, "I was out painting." Everyone freezes. "Painting what?" the prosecutor asks. "You know, just stuff." "What kind of stuff?" "Oh, article. On walls." The judge raises an eyebrow. "Where?" Yo, downtown. Which walls downtown? He literally turned red, looked at his lawyer and said, "Am I allowed to not answer if I think it'll get me in more trouble?" His lawyer whispered, "That's called self-incrimination. Stop talking." But it was too late. The damage was done. Guilty verdict. It wasn't even a hard decision for the judge at that. Story 18. This was a divorce case. Pretty typical. Husband and wife splitting up, 2 kids involved, decent amount of money and property on the line. The husband was trying to get out of alimony and minimize child support, claiming he was broke. Said he had no job, no income, barely surviving. Then, the wife's attorney showed the court his dating profile on a luxury dating app. It included a bio that read, "Multi-millionaire entrepreneur. I don't work. I make money while I sleep." Pictures of yachts, luxury watches, stacks of cash. He claimed it was just to impress women. The judge asked him, "So you lied there or you're lying here?" His lawyer tried to argue it was satire, but then came the real nail in the coffin. His Instagram, full of videos of him bragging about crypto wins, Airbnb rentals, and passive income stacking. The wife's lawyer even played one clip where he said, "My ex isn't getting a dime out of me. I've got it all hidden in shell companies. He lost everything. Full alimony, full child support, and an audit. All because he couldn't resist flexing online." Story 19. In small claims court, a guy was suing a bakery for emotional distress after they refused to write a controversial message on a cake. He claimed it was discrimination, that his rights were violated, and demanded $5,000. He actually came off well at first, articulate, calm, quoting obscure laws. Then the bakery owner took the stand and said she refused the message because it contained hate speech. She brought a printed version of the requested message. It was bad. Like, should have been a hate crime level bad. The guy, instead of denying it, doubled down and said, "Exactly, that's what I wanted. It's my right to express myself." The judge stared at him and said, "Sir, I'm not sure you understand how the First Amendment works." Guy said, "You're violating my freedom of speech too." Judge just calmly said, "You're free to say it, but no one's required to help you write it on a cake." Case dismissed. He tried to argue. Judge told him if he didn't leave, he'd be held in contempt. Story 20. This one wasn't even my case. I was just sitting in the courtroom waiting for my turn when this played out. A woman was contesting a traffic ticket, speeding 60 and a 35. She argued that the radar gun was faulty, that she was being profiled, and that she had dashcam footage to prove she wasn't speeding. The judge gave her permission to present the footage. She pulls out a laptop, connects it to the screen, and starts playing. And within 5 seconds, you hear her bragging to a friend on Bluetooth. "Dude, I'm flying right now. This road is so empty. Bet I can hit 65 before the next light." Then you see her blow through a speed limit sign, 35 miles per hour. The whole courtroom started snickering. She slammed the laptop shut and said, "That wasn't supposed to be in that clip." The judge just shook their head. Ticket stands. Pay the fine. Next case. Story 21. I once witnessed a guy lose a personal injury case in less than 5 minutes. He was suing a grocery store after supposedly slipping on a wet floor. Claimed he hurt his back so badly he couldn't work, walk properly, or even sit for too long. In the courtroom, he played it up hard, wincing, limping, groaning every time he moved. He even brought a neck brace, which had never been mentioned. Then the defense attorney brought out his TikTok. Less than 48 hours before the trial, the guy had posted a video doing the gritty dance at a house party. No brace, no limp, no signs of pain, just him yelling, "I still got it." The judge didn't even let it go to full trial. He stared at the plaintiff for a solid 10 seconds and said, "Sir, you're done here." Dismissed. With prejudice. I've never seen someone walk out of a courtroom so much faster than they claimed they could. Story 22. Divorce case. Husband was trying to convince the court that his wife was an unfit parent. Claimed she was always out partying, left their young daughter with random people, and had questionable priorities. His main piece of evidence? A private investigator report, mostly just photos of her entering clubs and restaurants. Then came her turn to speak. She calmly laid out her entire schedule, daycare drop-offs, nanny hours, her exact work hours, she was a bartender, and even text records showing she hired babysitters in advance for every night she was caught partying. Then her attorney dropped the hammer. They submitted bank statements showing the husband had spent over $3,000 on gambling websites over the past 2 months. He had been claiming to the court that he couldn't afford child support. His face turned red. When asked about it, he said, "I was trying to win money for my kid." Judge awarded her primary custody, full decision-making rights, and a raised support. He tried to protest, and the judge just said, "You should have thought about that before betting the mortgage." Story 23. I represented a guy in a civil suit over property damage. He was accused of keying his neighbor's car after a parking dispute. He swore he didn't do it, said he wasn't even home when it happened. The neighbor had a blurry security cam still. You could barely make out the figure. Honestly, we might have had a decent chance at casting doubt. Then my client decided to bring in his own dashcam footage to prove his innocence. Except it showed him pulling into the driveway that day, getting out, looking at the neighbor's car and, wait for it, muttering, "Fuck this guy," before walking out of frame. You could hear the keying sound. He handed over the smoking gun himself. I wanted to disappear into the floor. Even the judge said, "Mr. Name, thank you for providing the most conclusive evidence in this case." For the other side, we settled immediately. He still doesn't understand what he did wrong. Story 24. This guy was suing a former business partner for allegedly stealing his startup idea. Claimed he pitched the concept, shared documents, and the partner ran with it behind his back. It started off believable until the defense brought in email timestamps and a patent filing. Turns out, the defendant had filed paperwork for the business 3 months before the plaintiff even contacted him. But the real kicker? The plaintiff's own email had an attached PowerPoint labeled New Business Model 2022 Final V2, which was clearly a ripoff of the defendant's already launched website. In cross, he said, "Well, yeah, I saw his site and thought I could do it better. That doesn't mean I stole it." His lawyer just slowly closed their laptop. Judge said, "Sir, this is not Shark Tank. You can't pitch a stolen idea and then sue the person who actually did the work." Case dismissed. Defendant got attorney's fees too. Story 25. Not my client. I was just observing this wild scene while waiting for my own case to be called. Man was being charged with disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. He claimed police targeted him unfairly and used unnecessary force. The court was leaning sympathetic because the body cam footage did show the officers getting unnecessarily aggressive after the initial stop. Then the prosecutor stood up and said, "We'd like to submit Exhibit C, the defendant's live stream." Turns out the guy live streamed the entire thing to Instagram. What body cam didn't capture was him, moments before the altercation, shouting, "Watch this. I'm gonna make these cops go viral. Let's see how crazy I can get." Then he started fake screaming, flailing, and trying to provoke the officers. Judge reviewed the footage, looked disappointed, said, "This could have gone differently, but instead, you filmed your own undoing." Guilty, all because he couldn't resist the clout. Story 26. A guy was fighting a traffic ticket in court, $200 for running a red light. He said the camera was faulty, the light was yellow, and it was just a money grab. Standard stuff. But he didn't hire a lawyer. Instead, he came in armed with research from some anti-government forum, ready to argue that traffic laws were unconstitutional and that the court had no jurisdiction over a sovereign citizen. The judge gave him a lot of rope to speak. He rambled about maritime law, claimed his name in all caps wasn't legally him, and even said, "This court is an admiralty court, unless proven otherwise." The judge, a very calm, older gentleman, waited until he was done, leaned forward, and said, "Mr. Name, you were caught on camera. Your license plate is visible. You entered the intersection 1.3 seconds after the light turned red. Pay the fine." The guy screamed, "I do not consent," and was immediately escorted out by security. Everyone clapped. Seriously. Story 27. Family law case. A mother was trying to regain partial custody of her son after losing it during a rough divorce. She had gone through counseling, had a steady job again, and things were actually looking hopeful. The judge was open to revisiting custody. Then her ex's lawyer pulled out her public Twitter feed. There were recent tweets, very recent, trashing the judge, clueless idiot in a robe, mocking the court system, and worst of all, one that read, "Can't wait to get my kid back so I don't have to pay for daycare and little man better not cramp my weekends." She tried to claim it was sarcasm. The judge, stone-faced, just said, "Do you understand how public statements reflect on your fitness as a parent?" Custody stayed with the father. Her lawyer looked like he aged 5 years on the spot. Story 28. Criminal case. Theft from an employer. A guy was accused of skimming money from the cash register at a restaurant. The owner suspected him but had no direct footage or witness. In court, the defendant was calm, polite, well-dressed. He said he was being framed. No record, no prior issues. The jury seemed skeptical of the prosecution. Then, out of nowhere, the prosecutor asked to enter a new piece of evidence. An email from the defendant to his friend. Subject line, "How I'm stealing from work. LOL." The email broke it all down in bullet points like it was a DIY tutorial. Take a little from the till, round up receipts, never do it 2 days in a row. He tried to say it was a joke. The prosecutor just said, "Then why did your bank account show deposits matching the missing amounts 5 days in a row?" Convicted. Immediate. You could hear a pin drop when the verdict was read. Story 29. Civil court. A tenant was suing their landlord for unsafe living conditions and tried to get out of paying rent for 6 months. Claimed there were rats, no hot water, and mold. The landlord had some documentation showing maintenance was done, but the tenant was very convincing. Until the landlord submitted screenshots of the tenant's Airbnb profile. Turns out, while claiming the unit was uninhabitable, the tenant had been renting it out for $150 per night, describing it as cozy, clean, and perfect for couples. And yes, the photos on the listing were recent and showed the same apartment, spotless. Judge asked, "So you're saying this place isn't safe to live in, but is safe enough to rent out to tourists?" The tenant stammered, then said, "Well, I was just trying to make up for the rent I couldn't pay." Case dismissed. Landlord smiled the entire time. Story 30. This was a small claims case. A woman was suing her dog groomer for allegedly shaving her dog without permission, ruining its appearance before a local dog show. She brought pictures of her Pomeranian pre- and post-groom. Before, fluffy and majestic. After, patchy, uneven, almost tragic. She was demanding $1,500 for emotional damages and show fees. The groomer claimed she did exactly what the customer requested, and she had proof, a signed form, which included a section checked, "Okay to shave due to matting." The woman denied signing it, swore up and down it was forged. Then the groomer pulled out her final weapon, the security footage from the front desk, showing the woman filling out the form, circling matting concerns, and joking, "Do what you gotta do. Just don't make her bald." The woman went silent. Judge, "You gave permission." She followed instructions. Case closed. Bonus. The dog actually won funniest look at a local fair the week after. There's a happy ending somewhere in there. Story 31. I had a client fighting a noise complaint citation from the city. He lived in a duplex and said his upstairs neighbor was just trying to get him evicted because they didn't like his music taste. He claimed he always kept the volume low and never played anything past 10 p.m. During the hearing, the city presented logs of multiple complaints over a few weeks. Still, it was mostly hearsay, no recordings, no measurements. Then my client, for some reason, says, "If anything, the neighbor should thank me for upgrading their music taste. No one complains when the bass hits right." The city attorney just blinked and asked, "You admit to loud bass levels?" "Yeah, but only during my sets." Sets? That's when he proudly tells the court that he's a bedroom DJ and streams live mixes online twice a week. Guess what? They pulled his public stream archive. You could clearly hear the music and in the background, pounding on the ceiling and someone yelling, "Turn it down." He thought the video made him look cool. The judge thought it made him look guilty. Case closed. Fine upheld. Story 32. A guy tried to sue a mechanic for sabotaging his car after a routine oil change. Claimed the mechanic purposely damaged his engine so he'd have to come back and pay more. He showed pictures of a blown engine, said it died 2 days after the oil change. It was a bit suspicious, until the mechanic calmly submitted service records and receipts, including a note from the customer refusing a recommended oil filter replacement. But the real bomb was a Facebook video the guy had posted just hours after picking up his car. It showed him doing donuts in an empty parking lot, revving the engine to redline while his buddy yelled, "Send it!" The caption? "Oil change done. Time to abuse this beast." When asked if that was him in the video, he tried to lie. But the license plate was visible and he'd posted it on his own page. Even the judge laughed. Case dismissed with prejudice. Story 33. Criminal case. Theft from a retail store. My client was accused of stealing a $300 watch. There was no surveillance footage catching the moment of theft, just circumstantial evidence and a store employee's testimony. We were doing surprisingly well. Reasonable doubt was in the air. Then the prosecution asked for a break and returned with something unexpected. My client's own YouTube channel. In one video, posted after the alleged incident, he did a fashion haul, where he proudly showed off the same watch, saying, "Snag this for free. Don't ask how." I looked at him. He looked at me. We both knew it was over. He whispered, "That was for the content, not real." Yeah, try telling that to a jury. He was convicted, and the video got flagged as evidence in 2 other open investigations. Story 34. This one was sad and kind of funny at the same time. Small claims court. A young couple was suing a wedding photographer, saying he ruined their memories and delivered unusable photos. They were asking for a refund and emotional damages. They showed a slideshow of blurry, badly lit, awkward photos. And to be honest, they had a case. The photos looked like they were taken on a flip phone in a moving car. The photographer looked panicked until he asked the judge if he could present his original files. Turns out his versions were flawless. Bright, crisp, beautifully composed. He even brought the SD card. The judge was confused. Why are these different? The groom sheepishly admitted they ran all the photos through a filter app to make them more aesthetic, and didn't save the originals. The bride chimed in. We thought the moody vibe would be cool, but it didn't turn out like we imagined. So, they edited the photos badly and then sued the guy for their own edits. Case dismissed. Photographer got a standing ovation from his own mom, who had come to court with him. Story 35. I saw this during a real estate dispute. A landlord claimed a tenant was living in a rent-controlled unit illegally by subletting it on the side. The tenant denied it, said they'd never rented the place out. Landlord had no hard proof, just a suspicion. Then the landlord's attorney brought out the tenant's LinkedIn profile. Under Side Hustle, it literally said, Airbnb Superhost, earning passive income from my unit since 2019. They cross-referenced the photos on the Airbnb listing with the unit. It was the exact apartment, same curtains, same weird dent in the wall, even the same rug. The tenant tried to say it was a different property. But then, the landlord played the promo video from the listing, and in it, you can hear the tenant's dog barking in the background. The same dog they brought to court that day. Judge just said, this is the most millennial eviction case I've seen. Tenant was evicted. LinkedIn bio updated later that week to currently between opportunities. Story 36. Guy was fighting a restraining order filed by his ex-girlfriend. He claimed she was lying, said he hadn't contacted her in months and that she was just trying to ruin his reputation. At first, it looked like it might come down to a he said, she said scenario, until the ex's attorney pulled out an envelope and asked the judge for permission to enter recent physical evidence. Inside, a handwritten letter he had sent her just the week before, begging to get back together, and ending with, if I can't have you, no one. He tried to say it wasn't his handwriting. Then, the attorney produced a second letter, identical wording, same stationery, and this time he'd signed it with his full name. He still tried to deny it, until the ex pulled out her phone and played a voicemail of him reading the exact same letter over the phone while crying. Restraining order granted. Permanent. Story 37. This guy was suing a dog kennel for losing his emotional support animal. He claimed they gave his dog away, demanded $15,000 in damages, and accused them of negligence and fraud. The kennel staff looked horrified, said they followed all procedures, and even had paperwork proving he picked the dog up a week after the boarding ended. He denied it ever happened. Then they played security footage from the pickup day. It showed him, clear as day, hugging the dog, smiling, and saying, "Good boy, time to go home." When asked to explain that, he said, "That wasn't me." Everyone just stared at him. The clerk verified his ID from that day. It matched. Then, the kicker, he had posted a picture on Instagram the same day with the caption, "Reunited with my best friend, with the dog." Case thrown out. Judge said, "Sir, are you trying to waste the court's time?" Story 38. A woman was contesting a prenuptial agreement she signed before marrying a wealthy entrepreneur. She claimed she was coerced into signing it and didn't understand what she was agreeing to. She had a decent argument until the husband's attorney submitted video evidence from the day they signed the prenup. It was a selfie video, recorded by her. She's smiling, holding up the document and saying, "Ladies, if he's rich and wants a prenup, don't panic. Just sign and secure the bag." Her own voice, her own phone, her own plan. She claimed it was a joke. The judge didn't laugh. Prenup upheld. Husband's attorney just leaned back and said, "We rest." Story 39. DUI case. Guy claimed he was not the one driving when his car crashed into a mailbox at 2 a.m. Said he had lent his car to a friend and was asleep at home during the incident. Then the officer on the scene testified that the man had been behind the wheel, slurring his words, smelling like alcohol, and yelling about how dumb mailboxes are. Still, no dashcam footage, and the friend wasn't called to testify. It was shaky, until the prosecutor asked to admit evidence found during a social media search. Turns out the guy had posted a selfie on Snapchat literally seconds before the crash, captioned, "This mailbox ain't ready." The judge just blinked. Defendant: "I was joking." Prosecutor: "The mailbox wasn't." Convicted. License suspended. Meme deleted. Probably. Story 40. I watched this happen in a probate case. A man was challenging his late mother's will, claiming she was mentally unfit when she wrote it and that his sister manipulated her into changing it last minute. His lawyer gave a decent argument, showed some evidence of the mom's dementia diagnosis, and it looked like things might sway his way. Then the sister's attorney brought in a witness, their mom's hairstylist. You could hear the collective, "Huh?" from the room. But the stylist had video messages the mom recorded during their weekly visits, talking about her will. She was clear, sharp, and made it known she wanted her daughter to get the house because she was the only one who ever helped me. The best part? One of the videos ended with, "And if my son's watching this in court one day, shame on you. Didn't even call on my birthday." Case dismissed. The brother walked out red-faced. The sister hugged the stylist like a war hero. Story 41. A man tried to sue his neighbor for damaging his fence, claiming the neighbor drove a truck into it while backing out of the driveway. Said the fence was handcrafted cedar, worth over $5,000. The neighbor denied everything and insisted the fence was already rotting and falling apart. Then the plaintiff, in a move no one saw coming, said he had video evidence from his Ring camera. Judge allows it, he pulls it up on his tablet and hits play. At first, you see the truck backing up, slowly, carefully, and never actually hitting the fence. Then, 20 minutes later in the same video, the plaintiff himself is seen kicking one of the fence posts, muttering something, then pushing the whole thing over. Gasps in the court. When the judge asked him to explain that part, he said, "I was just testing how unstable it was after it got hit." Judge: "Sir, you were never supposed to be the smoking gun in your own trial." Case dismissed. And he got reported for insurance fraud right there. Story 42. This guy was representing himself in a petty theft case, allegedly stole a drill from a hardware store. He claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that he had brought the drill into the store to exchange it, but couldn't find a clerk and decided to leave with it again. The prosecutor played security footage that clearly showed him grabbing the drill off the shelf, looking around, and walking out. His defense? That's not theft. That's just bad timing. He argued that the cameras didn't show intent, and that technically, he never ran out, so it wasn't urgent or sneaky. Then the prosecutor read out a quote from his police interview. "Yeah, I grabbed it, but I was going to return it if I got caught." He still thought he was innocent. The judge didn't agree. Story 43. This woman was suing her HOA because they fined her for having a non-compliant mailbox. She argued her new mailbox was artistic, tasteful, and added charm to the community. She even brought photos to court. It was a 6-foot-tall mailbox shaped like a flamingo wearing sunglasses. The HOA's bylaws were vague and it might have gone her way, until she got cocky. During her testimony, she said, "Besides, I don't even care what these people think. The whole HOA is a joke. They can fine me all they want. I'm never paying it." The judge raised an eyebrow. "You're not planning to pay any HOA fines?" She doubled down. "Nope, not a single cent. They're all power-hungry Karens." HOA lawyer smiled like he'd been waiting for that all day. Judge ruled in favor of the HOA and said she'd now be liable for all unpaid fines, totaling over $3,500. She shouted, "I'll put sunglasses on the next one too," as she stormed out. Story 44. Divorce court. The husband claimed he had no significant assets to divide, said he lived a modest life, owned nothing valuable, and that most of the couple's savings were gone. Then the wife's attorney submitted screenshots from a Reddit post he made, titled, "How I Hid $50,000 from My Ex During Our Divorce. Ask Me Anything." In it, he bragged about pulling cash out in small chunks over several months and stashing it in a safety deposit box she doesn't know exists. He tried to claim the post was satire, but then his Reddit username matched his email address used in court. Wife's lawyer even read a comment thread where he gave advice to someone else hiding money and said, "Worked for me. She still thinks I'm broke." The judge ordered him to pay her the full $50,000 plus attorney's fees. The man asked if he could delete the post. The judge replied, "You'll have time to think about that while writing the check." Story 45. This guy was fighting a ticket for texting while driving. Claimed he wasn't texting, just adjusting his GPS. Said he was pulled over unfairly and that the officer must have been bored. The officer testified, but there was no dash cam footage, so it was mostly word against word, until the guy said this during his statement. "Even if I was texting, it's not like I was on the freeway or something. I was just cruising through a school zone." The judge blinked. "You were texting in a school zone?" He backpedaled hard, said, "I meant I wasn't texting." Too late. The judge not only upheld the fine, but doubled it under enhanced penalties for school zone infractions. The guy slumped in his seat and muttered, "This is why people don't trust the system." No, sir. This is why people don't talk too much in court. Story 46. In a personal injury lawsuit, the plaintiff claimed he suffered a serious leg injury at a construction site. He said he couldn't walk without crutches, missed work, and was completely immobile for months. The defense attorney asked if he'd done any travel since the accident. He swore under oath that he hadn't left town. Then came the twist. The defense submitted a travel vlog featuring the plaintiff, hiking Machu Picchu. He was smiling, jogging up steps, no crutches in sight. At one point, he says to the camera, "This altitude is killer, but my legs feel amazing." His face went pale. His attorney didn't even try to explain. The case was dismissed, and the judge referred him for potential insurance fraud charges. Machu Picchu giveth, and Machu Picchu taketh away. Story 47. This guy was in a heated custody battle with his ex-wife, claiming she was morally unfit to raise their daughter. His angle was that he was the more stable parent, employed, sober, religious, family first, etc. Then the ex's lawyer handed the judge screenshots from a private Facebook group. The guy had been posting memes and rants in a group called Dads Who Need a Break from Their Dumb Kids. One post from just a week earlier read, "Thinking about faking my own death and moving to Canada. Can't take another 'why is the sky blue' conversation." He tried to say it was just venting. The judge said, "Well, it vented your credibility right out the window." Primary custody awarded to the mom. He now gets weekends and hopefully better privacy settings. Story 48. Tenant sued his landlord for harassment and privacy invasion. He claimed the landlord was entering the apartment without notice and even spying. The landlord denied everything, said he hadn't stepped inside since the lease started. It was a tight case, until the tenant decided to present his hidden camera footage as proof. Problem? The footage clearly showed the landlord knocking, waiting, and then entering only after being invited in. In one clip, the tenant even says, "Come on in, bro." Kitchen lights still flicker. When the judge asked why he submitted evidence that disproved his own claim, the tenant said, "I figured it would just vibe differently in court." It did not. Case dismissed. Landlord's counterclaim for defamation? Approved. Story 49. A guy was charged with public intoxication and disturbing the peace. He said it was all a misunderstanding, that he wasn't drunk, just tired and excited after a concert. The officer said he was stumbling, yelling profanities and trying to hug strangers in a gas station at 2 a.m. Still, no breathalyzer was taken, so his lawyer pushed the narrative that it was just harmless energy. Then the prosecutor played the store's security footage. The man could be seen doing an air guitar solo with a bag of Doritos, followed by trying to serenade the cashier with a slurred rendition of Bohemian Rhapsody. He finished by trying to pay for a Gatorade with a Blockbuster card. When asked if he still claimed sobriety, he said, "Define drunk." Judge, "I don't need to. You already did." Story 50. This guy tried to get out of a speeding ticket by claiming he had a medical emergency, said he was rushing home due to food poisoning, and going 90 in a 55 was the only option. The officer who stopped him had no body cam footage, and there was no accident, so it came down to credibility. Then the prosecutor asked, "Sir, were you by any chance live on Twitch at the time?" The guy froze. The prosecutor pulled up a Twitch clip from that exact time. The guy was live streaming from his phone, speeding, yelling, "Watch me break the sound barrier for this W." At one point he even says, "If I get pulled over, we're clipping it for content." The judge stared at him, then calmly said, "And now it's being clipped for court. Guilty? Fined, and banned from driving for 60 days. His viewers loved it, though. Story 51. A woman sued her former roommate for stealing her designer clothes and reselling them online. She said her wardrobe was worth over $10,000 and she had proof they vanished one by one. The roommate denied it all, claimed she never touched anything, and the plaintiff was just being dramatic. Then the plaintiff's lawyer submitted screenshots from Depop, an online fashion resale app. The defendant's profile featured dozens of items identical to the missing clothes. Still, the roommate insisted it was coincidence and common brands. Then, the plaintiff played a video she found from the roommate's TikTok, captioned, "POV, you move in with a fashion influencer and walk away with 10,000 in drip. You could feel the judge's soul leave their body." Case ruled in favor of the plaintiff. Roommate's TikTok account? Deleted the next day. Story 52. I sat in on a criminal trial where a guy was charged with shoplifting. The store owner claimed he stole several electronics by slipping them into his backpack while pretending to browse. The defense? Mistaken identity. He said it wasn't him on camera, and the footage was too grainy to be conclusive. It almost worked. The video was low res, and his hoodie obscured most of his face. Then the prosecutor asked him directly, "Were you in the store that day?" He says, "No." "Not at all?" "Nope." The prosecutor nodded, then walked over and placed a receipt on the evidence tape for a Monster Energy drink, purchased with the defendant's loyalty card 3 minutes before the theft. Silence. The defense lawyer slowly turned toward him. blinking like he'd just been stabbed in the back. The guy whispered, "Oh, yeah, that part. Guilty." And now banned from every location of that store chain. Story 53. Divorce case. The husband insisted the marriage ended because the wife had lost interest in being a partner and spent all her time partying with friends. Said he was the responsible one, working hard, keeping the home together, just trying to save their relationship. Then the wife's attorney submitted a photo album, not screenshots, printed photos, all from the husband's secret second Instagram account, where he posted selfies at raves, clubs, and pool parties with captions like, "Married but acting single." The final nail? A video of him singing karaoke to "It Wasn't Me," shirtless, while his buddy yells, "Tell the judge." He tried to argue it was a persona. The judge didn't buy it. She walked away with the house. He walked away with a lesson in privacy setting.